If you are a big giant Hasbro fanboy and will buy any hunk of plastic that they throw your way, this might not be the list for you. If when you bend over there's a gigantic sign saying Hasbro please insert here, then this is most definitely not the list for you. This video is made specifically for those people that have an open mind, that want to explore different options, basically people who aren't loyalists. I wanted to kind of explore a question that I've been asking myself over the past couple of days, because I recently ran into kind of a little bit of a rabbit hole. I checked out a couple of videos and a lot of people have been talking about this new website called AliExpress or AliExpress. I'm not sure the correct way to pronounce this. It's been pronounced in different ways in different videos, but basically this website sells knockoff Star Wars action figures. There are different rumors surrounding these particular figures. Some people say that they're just figures that maybe were rejected at the Hasbro facility or whatever type of manufacturing plant they use. They just didn't meet the QC standards. However, I personally don't subscribe to that theory. I think this is just somebody stealing Hasbro molds and then kind of doing it at another facility. I don't think that they would be doing it at the same facility. It just wouldn't make sense. Regardless, this website is selling them off as knockoffs. And I know a lot of you guys might be wondering, well, why aren't some of the bigger YouTubers talking about this? It's pretty plain and simple. They're not going to bite the hand that feeds. They get a lot of these free samples from Hasbro and from other type of manufacturers. And the last thing that Hasbro wants is these big time YouTubers talking about these knockoffs from overseas. So as I mentioned, I think it's just a matter of them protecting themselves, but I'm not going to judge them. Whatever it takes for them to continue making content, getting some of these free samples, if that's what they feel they need to do, then all the power to them. I just personally feel like this particular topic deserves a little bit more of attention, so I wanted to kind of dissect it a little bit. We're not only going to ask that question and some of the fallout that could, happen if people continue buying from this website, but also wanted to talk about their selection and some of the stuff that's available. Obviously, Hasbro doesn't want to lose any nickels or pennies that you might be spending overseas. So as I mentioned, let's talk a little bit about the fallout that could potentially happen from people continuing to buy from this website. Now, the reasons for why somebody would go this route rather than wait on Hasbro or go out there hunting for the figures themselves are pretty varied. I mean, there are a very small percentage of people that just have a personal vendetta against Hasbro. It's kind of the equivalent of giving them the middle finger or like mooning them. If you're going to be metaphorically mooning a company, please metaphorically shave your ass before you do so. But I don't feel like that's a majority of the people that have looked into this or have purchased from this particular website. I think most people fall into the second category, which are basically just people that have no alternative. The other option obviously is to go through a different third-party seller through eBay or Amazon and pay through the nose for some of these. Now, the price point isn't really that much higher compared to retail for some of these. We've seen, for example, the 212th Battalion Storm or Clone Trooper, I believe as of the moment of this recording, is going for about $35 including shipping and taxes. Obviously that's an estimated price, but that really isn't that far off from the original retail price, which was going to run you, including taxes, at your local Walgreens, which I believe it was a Walgreens exclusive, was going to run you roughly about $30. So it's about like a $4 to $5, maybe $6 price hike on it. It's not that big of a deal, but for those people that think that's somewhat of like a principle, they just don't want to overpay on any percentage on any figure that they could have found on retail, they're going to look for an alternative. And for the most part, that's, I believe, on Hasbro, because they should, especially for army builders, they should have them readily available. But that's another big option, right? The other big one is you kind of nickel and dime Hasbro here and there, because most of these figures are cheaper than their original counterparts. I was, like a great comparison is the Clone 1 or the Phase 1 Clone Trooper, which the knockoff online, I believe, goes for about like $14. Don't quote me on that, but it goes for about $14. Obviously, it doesn't come in original packaging. The quality is a little bit The standard of quality for these figures is a little bit lower than the Hasbro standard, but it is a much cheaper alternative. You're usually saving, from the moment of this recording, I checked on eBay, and most of these, if you buy multiples, you should be able to get them for low 20s. So you're saving roughly about $5 per figure. But with some of these other figures, the savings are a little bit bigger. You know, it's not necessarily just a $4 to $5 savings. Sometimes for some of these, it's up to like $15-16 if you want to save it. If you want to save, you know, a couple of bucks here and there, especially if you're going to buy multiples, I think that's a great way of saving money. Now, I think there's, again, that percentage is kind of small. I think most people just resort to this website because they can't find these out in the wild, because they have morals and principles, and a lot of them say, I'm not going to sell my soul. I'm not going to go out there and pay somebody who's flipping figures a couple of extra bucks. So I believe most people, you know, experiment with this website or look into it just like myself, due in most part just to the fact that they weren't able to find them out in the wild themselves. I had for example, the 501 Clone Troopers pre-ordered at GameStop, and for some unknown reason they canceled that. I guess GameStop didn't stock up on the 501 Troopers, so that was canceled. I'm not sure if that was a Hasbro or a GameStop issue. Regardless, I ended up losing on about like 5 to 6 of these that I had pre-ordered, but that's a perfect example. I wasn't able to find these anywhere else. I think I found a couple at Walmart, but I just was overly confident knowing that they were at GameStop pre-ordered. So I believe most of us just feel like these should have been really easy to find. Again, they're army builders. Most people that are collecting hardcore or even casually will pick up a couple, at least a couple of these. And for Hasbro not to have these readily available, regardless of whether they're exclusives or not, I think is really frustrating for those of us that, like I said, are starting, you know, specifically me, who has kind of gone down a rabbit hole with the Black Series line. I do want some Clone Troopers. I don't want necessarily every single one, but if I'm going to pick up a specific one, I would like to have, you know, at least 3 or 4 of each of these. So as I mentioned, I think that's the majority of the people looking at this website are just looking at army building options, and it's really frustrating the fact that Hasbro just isn't making these widely available. Now, is there a fallout? I think at the beginning maybe it was a symbiotic relationship between Hasbro and this website, but as time has gone by, because they've been able to get the molds from Hasbro somehow, I do feel like they've left them behind in a sense, and they don't have to rely on Hasbro to churn out new stuff. I think a perfect example of that are some of the Leader Clone Troopers or some of the ARC Troopers that Hasbro hasn't even manufactured yet. They're kind of like kit bashing, putting together certain Clone Troopers that Hasbro hasn't even released yet. And as I mentioned prior, there's a rumor floating around that these could potentially be like some sort of product samples that just never saw a wide release. Regardless, this website already has it available, so if you're interested in that, I will put a link in the description. But let's take a close look at what some of these troopers that they have available are. Now, we do have some pretty basic figures. For example, we have the Phase 1 Clone Trooper, as well as like a base Stormtrooper, as well as the Jetta Patrol version. The clone with taxes, at least what it was showing on my screen, was roughly about $14. The Phase 1 Clone Leader is roughly about like $3 more, so you'd probably be looking at around like 15 to 16 bucks. You also have the 332nd Ahsoka Clone Troopers, which are going for roughly about like $16 to $17, and then add a couple more dollars for the Leader. They also have some Phase 2 Clone Troopers, which, as I mentioned, we have not seen a wide release from Hasbro, but this one as well is going for about $14. The Leader goes for about $2 or $3 more. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I personally have not really purchased any of these, but it was just kind of me exploring, thinking out loud, just kind of weighing my options and really looking at the entire situation from a bigger scope or a grander scope. I personally consider myself a pretty big Hasbro fan, but recently some of the things that they have been doing have left me scratching my head and kind of questioning my fandom. But I'm very curious to see what you guys have to say at the end of the day. Everybody votes with their wallet, as the saying goes. Let me know in the comment section what you guys plan on doing. Do you plan on only supporting Hasbro, or do you kind of do a little bit of both, buy, you know, some knockoff third-party figures and some Hasbros? Do you mix them in? Let me know in the comment section what your guys' opinion is on this whole subject. As always, thank you guys for tuning in. I will see you guys in the next one. Thank you.